Hey everyone, this is Alex from Scale My Cleaning Business, where we help cleaning owners in the commercial space scale past 6 and 7 figures. Today I have with me Evan Lewis, who is especially good in the residential side, and he helps with the marketing for residential cleaning businesses all across the US. And today we're going to dive into his story as well as have him share some tips and tricks that you can use to improve your residential side of your cleaning business. So yeah, thank you so much, Evan, for coming on here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope, by the way, I hope you had a good holidays. I can't believe we're going into 2022 already.
Yeah. I remember the ball drop from last year like very vividly, where I was, what I was doing. And it's crazy to think that I mean, people always say that, oh, it feels like it was yesterday, but like I feel like this past year it really did feel like it went by very quick. But yeah, that's what I guess comes with the territory of staying busy and having fun. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this is really timely for you to come on and share some insights because I see it a lot on Facebook and a lot of these groups and a lot of the cleaning owners that we work with. Pretty much everyone is just after the holidays. Now that we're going into the new year, everyone's looking into their goals for the year for their revenue and where they want to take their business. So I think now more than ever is an amazing time for us to dive into some good strategies. And I'm excited for you to share some of the things that you've seen work on the residential side. So
yep.
but before we get into that, Evan, I know we've known each other for quite some time now, but for the people listening, would love to learn a little bit more about how did you actually get into marketing as well as cleaning? And I'm assuming it was the marketing first before the cleaning.
Yep. Yeah, great question. So basically at the very start of 2019 was when I really started my marketing journey. And originally I went to college to originally interested in becoming a physical therapist, actually. So funny how that lane changed. But yeah, long story short, I got into marketing just from some of the connections that I had. One being my dad's business. So he has a kitchen and excuse me, a kitchen and bathroom remodeling business. And he was kind of the first business that I sort of guinea pigged with because, his thing was always wanting to get new leads. And when it comes to testing, sorry, there's a truck outside my place right now. But when it comes to testing different things, to drive leads for his business, that was an area that he always felt like he kind of lacked in. And he was doing a lot of the traditional means of Home Advisor, Thumbtack, Angie's List, which there is a lot of crossover with those platforms for people in his space as well as the cleaning space. So when I started marketing for his business, there was actually some other connections of people that he referred my way. And some of those businesses included, painting companies, cleaning companies. And after working with, residential cleaning companies, that's kind of just where I found my stride. And I thought the business model interested me. I noticed there was a lot of opportunity in that space and a lot of other people that really needed help. And with my experience with marketing, generating leads, running paid traffic campaigns, it was just something that seemed to click very well. And that's when I decided to go all in and really just focus on that business.
Awesome. And also I'm always curious to ask this as well. So what got you into that frame of mind of running and taking part in the growth of the business? Would you say that was from your dad, or where did you get that type of mindset?
Yeah. So I always like to just see progress unfold on pretty much anything I do in my life. Like if I can put 5 hours of effort into improving a skill set that I have or achieving some type of outcome and seeing like the fruits of the labor pay off, then that's a win for me. And I think the reason why I got into marketing, more specifically paid advertising, learning about psychology, persuasion, and how, putting some type of offer to incentivize people to use a service that transformation just always really, I just really found interesting. And when I saw some of those things unfold for my dad's business, which you're right, he was kind of the first glimpse of that I got, where you take a high ticket service like kitchen remodeling, which could be, tens of thousands of dollars, and you find out that you could get leads for $6 by running some type of PDF lead magnet and essentially drum up new business like that. I thought, wait, this is like, I'm onto something. This could definitely be a viable method for pretty much any business in the trade space, but really any local business. And yeah, I think once I saw that transformation unfold is when I like really decided to hone in on my skill set and see if I could adopt that for some of these other businesses, including those in the cleaning space.
So yeah, like and then going into cleaning, I mean, what do you think? I mean, this is a huge industry. I think last time I checked, I want to say over 1 million cleaning businesses. I don't know if you ever looked that up, but it's crazy how many
Oh yeah,
there
there's a
are.
lot.
But yeah, what do you think in terms of the residential side that what do you think is the biggest maybe mistake, even just maybe mentally, that people make when they're starting their cleaning business on the residential side? Like, what do you think is something that they should think about, maybe one or two things they should think about, as they're starting on that side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that comes top of mind is understanding what you actually want to do in terms of your role in the company. So I've worked with people that are more suited for kind of the labor intensive part, meaning they don't mind grabbing a mop, grabbing a sponge, doing the actual work, and basically keeping their team nice and lean, meaning they don't have to write a paycheck for several different people, build this giant staff, because more money, more problems, but also more people, more problems. So there definitely is an advantage to keeping your team, nice and lean if you plan on doing the cleaning yourself. And then I've also seen the other side of the spectrum where people want to start right off the bat by basically building this model from scratch, remaining on the outside, kind of just having that CEO role of spectating everything, overseeing the operations, and they never touch a cleaning product in their life. And that's how they start their business. So they build a staff right away. And I think both of those are viable options. People can have a lot of success doing either. But I think that's the first thing is like grab a piece of paper or, get a notebook, something like that, and just write out specifically, okay, if I build a successful cleaning company this year, what is my role? And getting like crystal clear on that, I think is super important, because sometimes when things get difficult, your mind is going to play tricks on you. It's going to like start to pull you in the other direction. And you have to remember why you started the business in the first place. So for more of like a conceptual answer, that's kind of the first thing I would say. In terms of other challenges, I would say the next big thing is also just knowing where your bottleneck is. So this happens more so once you actually establish your company and once you start getting on the field and running into those issues. And one example of that would be, okay, like if I'm struggling to get new business, looking at my sales process holistically, what's actually the thing that's going wrong? So sales process isn't just selling people like into a recurring service or selling a lead on the phone to book an appointment. It happens before that too. How are you selling yourself as your brand? And sometimes people think that they have a lead problem. So they might say, oh, well, I'm struggling to get leads. When in reality, after diagnosing their business, seeing that they're getting, pretty good cost per leads, seeing that their conversion rates are actually pretty darn good, even if they're using some of these platforms like Home Advisor or Thumbtack, they might think that that's the issue, but the real issue is maybe something on the back ends. So maybe they have some staffing issues going on, or maybe they're struggling to convert one-time cleans into recurring clients. And by being able to map out that process, it's very helpful for me to actually see where the bottleneck is and make sure that we're focusing on that. So I would say that's probably the second answer I would give to your question is just people misunderstanding what the actual bottleneck in their business is.
Yeah. I also going from your first point, I like that you said to just, even if it's just on a piece of paper, just do something to become more aware of what you want to be doing in the business. Because I think, at least from, I think I've seen this too. I think it's so easy to get caught up in thinking that maybe you should be doing certain things, such as, I mean, even on the commercial side, for example, if employees call out or they quit, all these different things. But if your original intention is not to clean and you're being forced to clean, that could be a really bad situation, because it just takes up all your time, all your energy, all your attention, so that you can't really focus on other sides of the business. Then you're just caught up in cleaning, which, if that's what you enjoy, like, I mean, I personally don't enjoy cleaning, but if someone who likes to clean, which I've seen that too, then I think that could make sense too. But at the same time, maybe just being aware that there's only one of you, and always, as long as you have the right systems in place to cover those other areas,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in the beginning, maybe accounting isn't a huge issue, or hiring isn't a huge problem, but down the road, if you don't have that foundation in place, it could really catch up to you, I think. I mean, I don't know if you see that on the residential side, maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's this big push as of recently for people to kind of have that entrepreneurial spirits where they say like, okay, like especially with the pandemic, is like, okay, I'm gonna, create my own business, and I want to create a 7-figure business, make $1 million. And the truth is that not everyone is cut out for that. Like, I think some people are better off just maybe doing the cleaning themselves. Maybe they have like 1 or 2 staff, but they don't necessarily build to a huge clientele and make $60,000 a month. Maybe they get up to that $8, $9, $10,000 net profit, and basically just sustain that, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like there's people that's, hell no, they want to create a big business and that's their only goal. That's fine too. So just finding out like which lane fits you best and making sure that you can just focus on that is, I think that's just like a healthy mindset to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this stuff is complicated too. It's not just about, like you said earlier, like, I feel that it's not about leads. It's about understanding or mapping out, like you were explaining, the different parts, and seeing which part is, what is the biggest place that you can focus on that would produce the biggest result. What is the one area, whether it's sales, whether it's, the hiring part, if there's something that's falling through, leads is, I mean, they're only as good as you treat them, as much as you follow up with them, and as good as your sales skills are. So if that's not up to par, then you're just going to be wasting money pretty much. So I'm wondering, so on the residential side, what are some easy things that residential cleaners can do to improve their foundational skills of managing, and especially sales? Since we're kind of talking about leads there, like what are some things that they can do to get caught up to speed, if, especially if maybe they're new business owners, but maybe they have big goals as a business owner, and they're clear on that?
Yeah, great question. So I think just like with learning any new skill set, whether it's an interest, an instrument, learning a sports, learning how to, read books better, whatever, running a business, there's a lot of similarities. And one of the best things is just making sure that you get your repetitions in. So for example, if I'm working with a new company, one of the first things that I often try and, instill, at least for the first couple months, is to focus more so on volume over quality. So quantity over quantity or quality. And what I mean by that is basically, if we're looking at different lead sources of like how to drum up new business. So by the way, just to give like your audience a little bit of background, the main marketing aspect that I focus on is paid traffic. So running paid advertising to generate leads for, cleaning companies. And you have like two trains of thought where there's some platforms that are, let's say, a little bit more for qualified leads. So Google pay-per-click comes to mind. And it's essentially their search intent behind people that are actively searching for cleaning companies. So those first ads that pop up on the top where you could click on the link, get brought to their landing page, those are high intent leads. Now, the trade-off is you're going to be spending more to acquire those leads because, one, the platforms are a little bit more competitive, but also Google is a very smart network, and they know that most cleaning companies will have no problem paying $20, $30, maybe even $40 or more for a lead. Whereas if you look at platforms like Facebook, Instagram, these platforms, you could typically generate leads for a lot cheaper. However, on the qualification scale, usually these people are a little bit on the earlier end. So it takes a little bit more nurturing, a little bit more convincing. Sometimes they're not quite as yet ready to pull the trigger to get their house cleaned. But the whole thing that I like to try and teach my clients is that I would rather you sacrifice a little bit of that quality and just focus on quantity, because you're going to get more repetitions in when it comes to having discussions with people on the phone, learning how to conversate with leads, learning how to schedule them, learning how to convert them into recurring clients. So, more times at bat is when you're going to have a better chance at hitting that home run. So that's probably the biggest thing I would actually say for, people that are starting out.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. One thing we used to encourage when we first came out with our group coaching was to have our members to not just, I mean, maybe they could get some business out of it, but that wasn't really the point. But just to do some cold calls, just so that they could get out of their shells and just start talking to people. Because I even remembered when I started everything and I was starting to work with restaurants, and they were like the hardest people to, first of all, get in touch with. And second of all, like they were like the hardest people to ever sell anything, because they literally get sold to all the time by telemarketers. And I basically, got to a point where, first of all, I didn't really care about what they thought, in a good way, not in a bad way, but also just not sounding like a salesperson and showing that I care about their business. And I think that just comes from time and just repetition. And, even if someone maybe doesn't have lead gen systems, I would also recommend seeing if they can, do even small exercises like that, especially if they're maybe more of an introvert rather than someone who is better at talking to people, to make people feel comfortable and that you care about them. And just I think that's going to help, as well, just and being able to service them. And then also, I know I'm just throwing questions at you here, but what would you also say to someone who's maybe used to handling, so maybe for a certain amount of time, they've spent relying on occasional calls from Google and word of mouth, and then they themselves are trying out, or maybe they have someone like you who's helping them to run some ads and actually create some systems to follow up with any leads that they're getting. Like what is a good way to maybe make that transition in terms of how they talk to those people? Or I don't know if there's anything maybe you suggest.
Yeah. So to sum it up, it's setting realistic expectations. And more specifically, so you brought up a good point. A lot of businesses are used to growing their business, or at least surviving, based on word of mouth referrals. And the first time that they start running paid advertising, or really any form of paid marketing, it can kind of be disheartening, because now they're dealing with a larger pool of, a larger audience group of people that aren't already sold on their service. Like, for example, if you got a referral for your cleaning company from your aunt or your sister or your best friend, that when that person contacts you, they pretty much already have some sort of trust with you. they trust their friends' input. So it's going to be very easy to convert those people. When you start running paid ads, whether it's Google ads, YouTube ads, Facebook, doesn't really matter. There always is going to be a good chunk of those people that aren't quite sold on your service yet. And that's totally fine. You can't expect a 100% conversion rate. Even if you get, 20% of those people to convert, or 30%, that's pretty damn good, for, just kind of across the board, just to kind of give you guys some loose numbers to think about. So I would say, just setting those expectations, realizing that it is a numbers game at the end of the day. Now, you can do some things to make those odds work more in your favor and to increase those conversion percentages. And that's part of the reason why I consult with cleaning companies and do their marketing for them, is because I'm always trying to improve those numbers as we go along. But at the end of the day, that's just, something that we have limited control over. So yeah, I think that answers your question. I don't know if there's maybe something else that you asked.
Yeah, and kind of going, no, that's perfect. And kind of going off on that too, like, someone who's maybe somewhat interested in, let's say residential services, maybe there's like an offer, but maybe they're weighing a couple options, or maybe they're not completely convinced that they want to work with the cleaning owner. What would you say are maybe some things that they can do today to avoid that and make it more likely for them to know their brand, know their company a little bit better before they even talk to them, to make it an easier conversation? I don't know if that's like kind of a long-winded question there, but I don't know if you kind of understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think your question is, how can you like establish as much rapport as possible for that lead before they contact the business, and like thus
Yeah,
increase.
oh yeah, absolutely. Like either before or during the conversation, I would say.
Yeah, no, great question. So this kind of goes more into like, what are my actionable steps in terms of helping out a cleaning company with their marketing. And I kind of break it down into 3 steps. So like the first step is basically the branding. So how can you indoctrinate people into your business and essentially get people interested in seeing what you have to offer before you even offer anything to people. Then there's stage 2, which is the lead generation, the paid traffic. That's, I think, what most people are. It's kind of like the more straightforward process. Most people are familiar with, advertising, that kind of thing. And then step 3 is really focusing on the automate and conversion process, which is, okay, after we've reeled those people in, how can we make sure that we improve our retention, make sure that they keep using our service, so they're not just one-time cleans, but more frequent. And that's when things like referral programs, postcards, sending out like an automatic email and text message quarter annually, etc., those become important. So the first stage is, I think, kind of what you're asking me, which is how can we humanize our brand a little bit more. And this is probably my number one like content strategy. Any of you guys watching this right now and you have a residential cleaning business, even if you have a commercial cleaning business, you guys can benefit from this, is start branding yourself. This is super important. If you guys are looking at any of the like social media platforms that are very popular right now, whether it's TikTok, Twitch, Discord, Instagram Reels, you'll notice that there's a common narrative, which is that these are usually focused around video. They're very personal, almost to the point where sometimes it's almost a little bit weird what some people like film videos about. But if you can take those concepts and apply it to your own cleaning company and say like, okay, how can I give people more of a day in the life aspect of my business? The before and after photos are great. The actual videos of you cleaning, those are all fine and dandy, but people want to connect with the business owner on an interpersonal level. And I think we're seeing more of this start to come out, especially in the past couple of years. So I would say by far one of the best ways that you could supplement your marketing strategy right now is to include a little bit more of that kind of like daily behind the scenes sort of footage and videos into your marketing strategy. And even if it doesn't pay off right away, it definitely will pay off as time goes on.
So what would you say on terms of residential? What would be maybe I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 of the main platforms that they should focus on to attract those types of clients and kind of just build their brand on.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think ultimately having an omni-channel, like an omnipresent strategy is probably going to be, um, the best plan. If you take something like SEO, for example, or sorry, if you take like Google My Business, for example, just by having like your business name listed across as the same exact trademark on multiple platforms, whether it's Angie's List, Facebook, Yelp, like just making sure that your name is congruent on all of those platforms, that alone will actually boost your SEO, for example. And there's a lot of platforms that cleaning companies could be focused on to like have people come to them. But I would say like probably the main ones, Google My Business, I think is very underrated. They've made it more like Facebook and Instagram where they actually have a section, if you guys aren't familiar with, where you can actually make posts on a daily basis. And this alone will help your organic ranking by, just posting whatever. It could be photos with some little caption. It could be offers. It could be, like value-based post. So I would say Google My Business is definitely something. Also starting to leverage Google reviews. So even if you're advertising on Facebook primarily, there are going to be a chunk of people that click off and maybe search your business on Google first just to kind of see what their reputation looks like. So that's another thing that I think is underrated. In terms of social media, Facebook and Instagram have always been the head honchos, and I think they kind of will be for a long time. So especially with the types of demographics that most residential cleaning companies service, most of your market is going to be on at least one of those platforms, if not both. So I think having that involved with your content marketing strategy is definitely a key focus. So those are like my top three: Google My Business, Facebook, Instagram. And then I would say what comes after those is maybe YouTube. So YouTube is pretty much a blue ocean in terms of like posting content on there and getting a good reach, but there's a little bit more margin for error. So I would say like that's maybe a little bit more intermediate or advanced. Like I wouldn't necessarily recommend people invest all their time into YouTube, especially if they're just starting out. And there's some of these other platforms too that I'm not even so much familiar with from a pure marketing standpoint, such as like TikTok or maybe even LinkedIn, which I think that's what you guys focus on for your
Yeah.
commercial cleaners. But yeah, there's a lot of them. I would say those three ones though that I mentioned are, if you only had to pick three, those are kind of the ones I would focus on, definitely.
Yeah. And to anyone watching this, I know this sounds like a lot, but actually there's ways of, if you have a multiple channel type of strategy, you can pretty much just use almost similar or even the same exact content for multiple uh, platforms. So one thing that even we've done in the past is an interview like this, for example. We'll actually have sometimes our editor will take little tiny chunks of the interview, maybe little highlights, and then those tiny chunks of the interview, maybe 10 to 20 seconds long, those would be perfect for something like an Instagram reel or something where people have, I would say, shorter attention spans, as opposed to like maybe something like YouTube where people will actually sit down and watch a training or watch a interview for 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes, I mean, usually I think they recommend at least 10 minutes for their videos. But yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't have to be complicated. I think even if a residential owner is just showing a clean house, and if they do that, and even as a bonus, if they show their employees to do that, maybe, and I think that is going to pay off in the long run. And also too, I mean, before that, if they build that brand and they're already getting referrals from that, and then they introduce some type of system like what you recommend with the Facebook ads and all that kind of stuff, that stuff is just going to take it even much further. I mean, as opposed to if they just didn't have like a really good online presence, maybe.
Yeah, I want to just to add something to that. So you're absolutely right. Repurposing content is going to be your guys' best friend, especially if you guys are trying to do this in the most time efficient way possible, which I'm assuming most of you are. And to kind of give you like a personal example, so Dominique, who's in your group, Alex, him and I are doing some work together for his residential, for his, carpet cleaning side. So Dominique, hi, if you're watching this. But good example is he has a lot of good YouTube content that I notice. One of them being one of his techs. They actually have like an informational value-based video where they say like, okay, here's our 3-step pre-carpet treatment steam cleaning process. And one, he has that post on YouTube. So, if for whatever reason someone is searching for carpet cleaning in his area on YouTube, he could potentially pop up for that. He also has a video that he can now put on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn if he wanted to. So people that are, stumbling upon his channels on those networks and they click on his page just to see what's going on, they'll be able to see it there. And also we were able to actually turn that into an actual ad for him that we're running as a video ad, which has been, generating very good results. So that's just like that one session that he basically invested to record that video has now turned into pieces of content that can be distributed on 4 different platforms essentially and work in his favor.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, I mean, and it works for both sides too. It just, I think the only difference is maybe the platforms. On the commercial side, we recommend Facebook can be good, especially if they're working their network, friends and family. But yeah, more ideally, LinkedIn, Google, definitely, of course, having a good website. I mean, there's different websites, where they can put their things like Yelp, things like that. But yeah, the concept, I mean, is the same. I mean, if you're just recording, you just cleaning, or maybe just something funny or something around, I mean, right now we're around the holidays. I mean, we're kind of just finishing up the holidays, but if you have a new 2022 offer, if you want to make a video about it, like there's so many different ideas, I think. And very few, I think, take full advantage of them. I know you're in a lot of these Facebook groups. I see a lot of people posting. It's interesting. Like I see a lot of cleaning owners maybe post their job or their special in a cleaning group, like a Facebook cleaning group, which
right.
Why a cleaner would buy another cleaner's services is kind of beyond me.
I always thought that was interesting too. I was like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they usually have like the right idea. I feel like a lot of people, especially starting out, like they have the right idea, but if they were to make maybe some tweaks, like instead of putting that into like a Facebook group, if they were instead to put that into like the different channels, maybe they wouldn't get a client tomorrow, but definitely over time, if they're consistent, they're going to start to get clients, 3 months from now, and they're going to start building up that momentum. And this is what Evan's describing to anyone watching this. This is not a short-term strategy. This is a long-term strategy. But when you put in systems into place, whether it's on the commercial or the residential side, it's going to make those systems so much more effective because they're going to see that you're a legitimate company that's actually posting and has a good online presence versus, 5 or 6 of your other competitors that are not doing those things. So,
yep. Yeah, and anyone who's currently running like Instagram ads or Facebook ads, for example, you'll notice that whether you're sending traffic to your website or a landing page, or maybe your call to action is just like the send message, like the messenger basically bot feature, doesn't really matter. You'll notice that a small percentage of your leads will actually not even opt into the ad. They'll just click on your page and then send you like a direct message and say like, oh, I saw you're interested. Like, what are the details, that kind of thing. So to make sure that you're catering to those people, and by the way, these are only the people that actually choose to send you a message. There's an even greater percentage that click off to your page but never act. So, but like what Alex said, this is a long-term strategy. Definitely, it can be kind of overwhelming to think about like from day one, but the fruits of your labor of basically posting on these platforms will make sure that you're catering to those people who maybe need a little bit more convincing, a little bit more information before they establish that rapport with you. And one other thing I wanted to add too is I don't have like any there's no like written rule about this, but I do have a strong indication that the ad accounts that I manage, those cleaning business owners that are posting on their page, like let's say 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, it could be whatever. Even though those direct posts don't result in really any added business because the organic reach kind of sucks on those social media platforms, unfortunately, I do think there's an advantage just from the way that their ads perform. And my hunch is that networks like Facebook and Instagram and Google, I do think that they reward advertisers that are also posting pretty frequently organically. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Alex, but it just seems like those ad accounts have lower CPMs, they get cheaper leads, and ultimately just more business. So I definitely think there's like some hidden rule behind it that those accounts do typically perform better.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen that definitely in the past, and even with our own ads sometimes, if we're posting more actively during certain times, definitely I've seen that. And the other thing too is, I mean, not trying to get too technical or advanced here, but I'm sure you've done this in the past, but you could actually if let's say you have posts that people are engaging with, maybe they don't necessarily buy from you, but you've been posting, let's say a month or two, you can actually run ads either directly to those exact people, or you can run ads to similar people, to those people that are engaging on those posts. So you can actually
Yeah,
build an audience for you to run really targeted and really good ads for those things. So if someone doesn't buy from you from a post, it's not a lost cause. Like, you're actually building up data that you can then use in paid advertising as well.
for sure.
So I'm sure you've done that stuff like that where, different audiences. It's actually crazy how much Facebook knows about people, which is a whole nother probably discussion, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. That deserves a whole nother training in and of itself. But absolutely, absolutely.
so what would you say? So, I mean, we're getting into 2022. A lot of people, I would say, are starting either maybe just relaunching or just starting their residential cleaning business, or there's, of course, cleaners that they have an established cleaning business. Maybe they've used a couple of things in the past and they already have a good clientele growing or going, I should say, but they just want to get to the next level in 2022. Maybe they want to double, or maybe they want to triple their business, triple the revenues, all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, what would you say is something that they should look into to accomplish that? Like, what would be a good way for them to start to get clear on what are the next steps to get to those levels?
Yeah, definitely. So to circle back, remember I talked about like the 3 stages, like branding, lead generation, and then automate and conversion. Basically, I have a tip for all 3 of those stages, and hopefully this will be like digestible. But for first steps, definitely focusing on a strong content marketing strategy for 2022, I think is a must. And more so like around video focused, I think is like an excellent way to get your brand out there, because people have a chance to see what you or your staff look like, what you sound like, how you work, what you represent. Video is the best way to capture that. So whether we're talking about from an organic standpoint or a paid traffic standpoint, I think that's definitely just a valuable tool to have under your belt and something that you could start leveraging. So I would say that's probably step number one. For the lead generation component is, yeah, just figuring out like which platforms are going to get you the best ROI. And sometimes like people just, they think they have a lead problem, as I mentioned, when they really don't. So great example, Thumbtack, Home Advisor. These platforms can work excellent for some people. Some people, they don't work at all, and they absolutely despise them. But the real thing is like, let's leave our emotions out of this for 1 second. Are you getting new business from it at a reasonable rates? I talked to one lady not too long ago who said she's spending about $20 to maybe $25 per lead on Thumbtack. And she says that out of all the leads she get from that platform, she converts about like 50%, so like half of them. So I'm like, okay, so it sounds like $20, $25 per lead. Let's just give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume 25 and you're converting about 50%. So you're basically spending like $50 to acquire a new client. And she said, yes. And she thought that was an issue. And I told her, I'm like, no, that's very good. And you said like, there's a good chance you're going to convert them into recurrent clients, right? She says, yeah, like 70% of them. And I told her, I'm like, look, it like based on what I've seen, this doesn't necessarily sound like you have an issue. I think you just need to like double down on this network because it seems to be working for you. And she was like, oh, really? So sometimes people don't even realize that something's working well for them and they just need to kind of hone in on that. Now, yes, people could hate those platforms for various other reasons. Totally get it. I don't think for a long-term standpoint, it's necessarily sustainable or you'll probably cap out very soon. But for someone starting out, I would try different things, just keep an open mind. Um, of course, I have some suggestions in terms of like if you want to help shortcut that experience just based on the advertising methods that I've used. But absolutely just keeping an open mind in terms of that. And then for the automate and conversion process, which is really focused more on sales in the back end, is deciding how you want to run your business. So to make sure that you have the highest degree of closing these leads into new clients, again, knowing that it's going to be a little bit more difficult than converting a referral from your best friend, it might make sense to invest in maybe some sales books or to start look into like some sales training, maybe even research like what some phone sales people do, whether it's like telemarketing companies or whatever. If you hate sales or you don't have the time to basically be on the phone and convert these leads into appointments, then maybe it makes sense into outsourcing that. So there's lots of different options for that too. You could look into call centers. You could look into like just basically like some type of appointment setting company that can do that for you. And if you fall somewhere in the middle where maybe you don't have a ton of money, but you also don't really want to be answering the phones, then you can find a happy medium, which might be getting together with a friend or a sibling or a family member who you could basically pay on a commission basis and say, hey, for every, lead that comes in, I want you to call them right away, follow up with them. And I'll tell you what, for every appointment that you book, I'll give you, $30, $40, whatever that number is that makes sense for you guys. And you could also do that. So those are like the 3 actionable steps I would give to someone who's just starting out or is still like running their business pretty successfully. But the first point I made about the content marketing, I think that could definitely apply for both people, whether you're just starting out or you've been running your business. I think more people should start focusing on that to generate new interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing with the content too is, and I think people don't always realize this, is you actually probably already have content and you don't even know about it. So if you just, for example, like if someone just were to look at their Google reviews, even if they only have a couple, they could just screenshot those and then just make that into a post and say, hey, we're looking to take on, 2 more residential accounts, going into 2022 over the next couple of weeks or next week. Is anyone interested? Or, kind of something like that. But just simple things like that could be a huge benefit, just using kind of like what you already have. And then on the other side too, like what would you recommend to someone, let's say they have a bunch of reviews, they're getting a lot of referrals. Maybe they've tried some things, they've found some success in maybe 1 or 2 platforms. What would you say is like the next step for them to reach their goals? Going into 22, maybe they're looking to double or triple or even more their business. Yeah, what would be how can they kind of go from there, do you think?
Yeah, so this is why I'm a big fan of tracking my numbers, my metrics, all the ad accounts that I have currently and what we're spending, tens of thousands of dollars every month to kind of look at this stuff are those key performance indicators, also known as KPIs. And these are things like daily budget, cost per click, cost per lead, landing page conversion rates, recurring client conversion rates. These metrics are very important to know from the get-go because you could think something's working well and you find out that you're actually paying like kind of a lot to acquire a lead or a new client, and then vice versa. You might think that you're spending a lot of money, but it turns out your metrics are actually very good, and you should probably just keep focusing on that. So that's the first thing I would say is, regardless of whatever you're currently doing, whether it's getting leads from Home Advisor, running Facebook ads, running Google local service ads, start keeping track of your numbers on a day-to-day basis, and use those to kind of leverage your strategy. And then once you find a platform that is working for you, it's really just about doubling down on that and investing, more into that one platform. So I think you will reach a point to where it's better to, instead of like casting a wide net and spreading yourself out too thin across 7 different advertising channels that give you lackluster results, it's actually better to find one that works for you really well and just invest all of your budget into that. And then once you start to get more income, you can start to explore some of these other channels if you want.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone listening to this, I mean, that's something I've seen as well, as just tracking your numbers is so important. It's so easy to make decisions based on emotion, but if you can avoid that and kind of just look at what is actually working, um, that is a great first step. I like the example that you gave of the person you were talking to that had something that was working but didn't know that it was working. And I feel that sometimes maybe it's that certain people might, especially in business, they don't have any reference to compare it to. So they think the grass is always greener, or maybe there's better options out there than what they're already doing. Um, but a lot of, I think, marketing is just not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but just kind of taking certain offers, parts about your business, maybe certain benefits and pain points in your area that resonate with whoever the customer is, and just seeing how you can amplify that to the next level. So from our standpoint, if they have an email system and they're getting good open and reply rates, it's like, cool, like how do we send out twice as many emails now? How do we
Yep.
set up even more systems to send out more emails for you? Or, on the LinkedIn side, how do we ramp that up? And just having different ways of scaling, the different parts. So, and then, I mean, Facebook is a lot easier because you just up the ad spend, but definitely being clear on those numbers first is important, because then if you up the ad spend, but your sales is horrible or people are not converting, then it's just wasting money. So you got to just be careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest fear people have is, let's say they're spending $10, $15, $20 a day on some advertising channel and it's working well for them. A lot of my job is really just giving people the confidence to make sure that they press the up arrow in their ad account and press submit. Some people don't have the confidence to do that themselves because they're not really sure if it's working. So going from $20 to $40 a day or $50 a day is really what holds a lot of people back. But yeah, again, going back to just tracking your numbers, like assuming things are within line, within KPI, that can really be the difference between you having a $100,000 a year cleaning business versus a 7-figure business. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think right now is a perfect time. People are more in a relaxed mode until going into January. So anyone watching this, I would highly encourage just to take some time and list out the different places you're getting leads from, whether it's on the residential or the commercial side, and look at all the different numbers of, how many leads you're getting, how many walkthroughs, I'm talking about the commercial side, how many quotes you're giving out, and then how many deals you're closing, and then what those closing amounts are per month, and also how long you're keeping the client. And then on the residential side, um, I don't know if yeah, actually, yeah, if you want to go for it, because I'm probably gonna maybe not include certain things, but what would you say on the residential side are some good numbers to look at, if you're a cleaning owner, just to write down, or even maybe put on a spreadsheet or something like that, just to
yeah,
be more aware?
Yeah, definitely. So part of the program that, I have my clients go through, we track all of this on a day-to-day basis so that they could see everything in visual format too. But yeah, I would say, number of leads, appointments booked, number of clients that converted into a recurring basis, and also churn rate if applicable. So I think that's something that people don't really account for is what's the lifetime value of one client to your business? Meaning if you sign someone onto a recurring basis, what does that mean for you typically? So does the average client stick with you for 6 months, 1 year, 3 years? So making sure that you have that number clear too is very important. But yeah, those are the main metrics I would look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And similar to residential too, I mean, there's a huge opportunity in that churn rate too. And I think, I mean, I made a video on this a couple weeks ago, but uh, it's a huge, huge opportunity because if you're not able to convert people into recurring work, then you're just going to be chasing your tail each and every month to acquire new customers. But if you can
Yeah,
get recurring and have a good system for upselling them to recurring services, and then after that, if they're happy and you can get them to refer through some type of incentive program on top of marketing consistently, like your business is just going to blow up. And it's not complicated. It's just having those things in place and building one thing at a time. So,
absolutely.
but I think it's simple, but it's not easy. I think it's like one of those things where it takes time to build
Yeah.
that out, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, this was so helpful. I know I asked you so many questions, but yeah, this was really helpful, and I think a lot of people in this group, as well as those of whoever's watching this on YouTube and our other channels, will find value from this. I think there's a lot of people that are maybe doing both commercial and residential, or maybe they're just starting residential. One last question I did want to ask you though, is we tend to see a lot of residential businesses that want to go into commercial. Um, would you say that there is maybe some things to look at to see if that's a good option for them, whether or not they should go into commercial, or if they should just see if they can double down on improving or what's working on the residential side, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the main thing would be kind of just, a little bit has to do with like personality traits, also just like how you want to run your business in general. Like for example, with something like commercial, I know one of the reasons why a lot of people like that option is because you can kind of go under the radar. You don't really have to interact with people. Whereas resident, like especially if you're cleaning an office off hours, at nighttime or something. Whereas with residential, you can't always get away with that. You have to be a little bit more interactive with people. So I think like that's one of the things to look at. Also with commercial, like a lot of you can probably attest to this more than I can, but part of the reason why that's a very attractive option for some people is because they just think that one contract is, $5,000 a month for my business, so it means more money, right? And while that is true, I think there's probably like a lot of other things that people just have no idea about, like paying staff and maybe just like contract frequency and maybe more licensing that has to go involved. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like from the legality standpoint, but those are like some things. And also, we have to consider staff too. So staff availability. So for example, I have one client right now who also does commercial work, and for her, going into commercial does make sense because a lot of her staff is available at nighttime, and they just want to basically get more revenue coming into the business, keep her workers busy like all day. So that's an option that makes sense for her. So those are like, probably the main things I would consider. Um, I don't know if there's probably some other things that I missed, but that maybe you want to chime in on, but that's what I would say.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think on another note too is what I'll do is under this video, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, one thing Evan can really help you with is coming up with a strategy. So if you are a residential owner and you just want to look at the numbers, you want to look at maybe the different parts of your business to see if it makes sense to maybe go into trying out some type of paid advertising. And obviously you have your program, um, or maybe it makes sense to double down on your sales skills, or maybe it makes sense to double down on one of the platforms you're already using. But yeah, if you're kind of stuck, I would highly recommend that you just take advantage of this and just hop on a free strategy with Evan, and he can really just go over your numbers, give you some really good advice on what he's seen work on his end, with all the residential cleaning orders that he's seen find success long term. But yeah, really the main thing is just finding where you're at right now and seeing where the biggest gaps are and seeing what your goals are and how can you make decisions that align with your goals long term. And just realize that nothing is going to happen overnight. It's really just about going in the right direction and executing and just focusing on what matters most and just having good clarity on that. So Evan can definitely help you along those lines. So yeah, Evan, thank you so much for sharing these insights. I know, we were kind of touching on some things that maybe will help people starting out, some things that could help people that are maybe further along on their journey. But I think this was super helpful for both sides. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to Evan directly on Facebook, and I'll also be posting his calendar link if you want to have a call with him sometime, and he'll be able to help you out. And yeah, is there anything else, Evan, you wanted to add?
No, man. I think we went over most of it. Of course, I could talk about hours for hours about like the technical details and different strategies, but yeah, hopefully this was helpful for your audience just to get an idea of kind of what the residential cleaning entails from like a paid advertising standpoint. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on. And I'll kind of leave on this note too. Both commercial and residential work, I've seen people make millions of dollars on both ends. It's just a matter of having a good action plan and being clear on your goals. So that's kind of, from my standpoint, what I would say. Either one works.
Agreed.
Just so that everyone is aware of that, because you've worked with some pretty successful ones as well. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, look at the link down below. And thank you so much, Evan, for coming on to this interview.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.